Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a college student working part-time at a fast food chain to pay for my tuition and books. I've been there for about 8 months now, and I thought I'd seen every type of difficult customer possible. On that evening and during the dinner rush, I was working the front counter, taking orders and trying to keep the line moving. The restaurant was busy but not crazy, just your typical weeknight crowd of families and people grabbing dinner on their way home from work. I was in a pretty good mood because I just aced a midterm that morning and was looking forward to my weekend off. That's when she walked in. This woman in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive clothes. She had this look on her face like she owned the place and everyone in it owed her something. I should have known right then that trouble was coming. She walked straight up to my counter, completely ignoring the fact that there were 3 people ahead of her in line. The other customers just stepped aside, probably sensing the storm that was about to hit. She yelled at me to excuse her and demanded that I listen to her complaint about a burger she'd ordered 20 minutes ago. She slammed a receipt down on the counter so hard that the register screen wobbled. I looked at the receipt and saw it was from about 10 minutes ago, not 20, but I wasn't about to argue with her about that detail. She said the burger was completely unacceptable and wanted her money back immediately. I apologized and asked her to tell me what the problem was, so I could help fix it. She called me honey in that condescending way some people do and went into a rant about how the burger was a complete disaster. She said it was an insult to her taste buds and demanded a full refund immediately. I noticed she was holding a burger wrapper, but it was completely empty. She'd clearly eaten the entire thing. But I've learned that pointing out obvious contradictions usually makes these situations worse. I apologized again and asked what specifically was wrong with the burger so I could make sure it didn't happen again. That's when she told me something I'll never forget. She said the burger wasn't gourmet quality like she expected, and then complained that she had specifically asked for extra pickles, but when she counted them, there were only 11 pickles. She emphasized how unacceptable that was. I blinked a few times, trying to process what I just heard. She had actually counted the pickles on her burger. Not only that, but she was complaining that 11 pickles somehow weren't enough extra pickles. In all my months working there, I'd never heard anyone complain about getting too few pickles, especially not after counting them. I apologized once more and offered to get her a new burger with extra pickles at no charge. She refused and said she didn't want another one of what she called our substandard burgers. She wanted her money back and called the whole experience a disgrace. By this point, a line was forming behind her, and I could see other customers getting impatient. Some were checking their phones. Others were exchanging looks like they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. But she seemed completely oblivious to the fact that she was holding up everyone else. She demanded to see my manager right away and said that this place clearly needed a lesson in proper customer service. I signaled to my manager, who I'll call Sarah. She's been working in food service for about 15 years and has seen it all. Sarah is one of those managers who actually has your back when customers get unreasonable, which is why most of us like working for her. Sarah introduced herself politely and asked how she could help. The woman's eyes lit up like she'd found her target. She straightened her shoulders and told Sarah that I had completely ruined her dining experience. She explained that she'd ordered a simple burger and received something that was basically inedible. She demanded a full refund and compensation for what she called a disaster. Sarah looked at me and I gave her a look that said, "Brace yourself for this one." Sarah's dealt with difficult customers before, but I had a feeling this was going to be something special. Sarah apologized for her dissatisfaction and explained that we could refund her purchase or have the kitchen make her a fresh burger with whatever topping she'd like. She asked which option the woman would prefer. The woman said she didn't want anything from our kitchen ever again. She just wanted her money back and threatened that maybe she wouldn't write a scathing review online about this place if we complied. Sarah processed the refund on the register and handed her the cash. At this point, I thought the whole thing was over. She had gotten what she asked for, and we could all move on with our lives. But apparently, getting a refund wasn't enough for her. She said the whole situation was ridiculous and demanded additional compensation for the emotional distress this had caused her. She asked if we people had any idea how much we'd ruined her evening. I looked around at my co-workers, wondering if we'd somehow entered an alternate dimension where counting pickles was a legitimate source of trauma. The other customers in line were starting to look annoyed, and a few were recording the whole thing on their phones. Sarah explained that she understood the woman was upset and had already processed her refund. Unfortunately, that was all she could offer at our location. She offered to give her our corporate contact information if she wanted to file a formal complaint. The woman said Sarah's apology meant nothing to her. She wanted a gift card, a voucher, something substantial to make up for what she called the nightmare we put her through. Sarah was clearly reaching the end of her patience, but she kept her professional composure. I've always admired how she can stay calm even when customers are being completely unreasonable. Sarah explained that she'd already refunded the money, which was our standard policy for unsatisfactory meals. She couldn't offer any additional compensation beyond that. That's when the woman completely lost it. She slammed both hands on the counter, making all the cups and napkin dispensers jump. The sound echoed through the restaurant and conversations at nearby tables stopped as everyone turned to stare. She shouted that she would not stand for this treatment and demanded to speak to our corporate office immediately. She said that we people clearly didn't know how to treat paying customers. The whole restaurant had gone quiet except for the sound of the fryers in the kitchen. Parents were covering their children's ears, and teenage employees were peeking out from the back to see what all the commotion was about. Sarah handed her a business card with a corporate number and explained that they would be able to assist her with any further concerns. She wished her a good evening. The woman snatched the card like it was evidence in a criminal case and asked if we thought this was over. She threatened to make sure everyone knew about the horrible service at this location and said we'd all be looking for new jobs by next week. She walked toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the tile floor. We all breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the drama was finally over. The other customers started placing their orders, and we tried to get back to normal operations. But about 5 minutes later, just when we were starting to catch up with the backed up orders, she burst back through the front doors like some kind of avenging angel. She announced that we people thought we could just brush her off, but we should think again. She said she wasn't leaving until she got proper satisfaction for what she called this insult. Customers gasped, and some of them started moving toward the other side of the restaurant. A family with small children quickly gathered their things and headed for the door. Sarah stepped forward, trying to maintain control of the situation. Sarah told her that we'd already addressed her concerns and processed her refund. She warned that if the woman continued to cause a disturbance, she'd have no choice but to call the police. The woman told her to go ahead and call them. She said she knew her rights and had every right to be there, demanding proper treatment. She said they wouldn't dare touch her. She was pointing dramatically at Sarah, her voice getting louder and more shrill with each word. At this point, Sarah picked up the phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. You could hear the woman's maniacal laughter echoing through the restaurant when Sarah spoke quietly to the dispatcher. When the officers arrived about 10 minutes later, she was still ranting about her rights and threatening to have us all fired. The two policemen looked tired, like they'd dealt with this type of situation before. One officer told her they'd received reports of a disturbance and needed her to calm down and leave the premises peacefully. She said they couldn't make her leave because she was a paying customer who was treated horribly. She demanded justice for what these people did to her. The other officer explained that if she didn't cooperate and leave voluntarily, they'd have to escort her out. He said she could file any complaints through the proper channels, but she couldn't continue disrupting this business. She crossed her arms and looked at the officers like they were part of some conspiracy against her. She finally agreed to leave for now, but said this wasn't over. She said we hadn't heard the last from her, and that this place would pay for humiliating her like this. She walked out again, but not before turning around one more time to point accusingly at all of us behind the counter. After she was gone, the officers took our statements and left their card in case she came back and caused more problems. The next morning, Sarah got a call from corporate. Apparently, the woman had called them first thing and filed a formal complaint, claiming we discriminated against her, refused to serve her, and verbally abused her. She completely twisted the story to make herself look like the victim and us look like the villains. Corporate told Sarah they'd need to review security footage and interview everyone who was working that shift. We were all nervous because the woman had sounded so convincing on the phone that the corporate representative seemed genuinely concerned about her allegations. Fortunately, our security cameras had captured everything, including her meltdown and her return trip. Corporate also spoke to several customers who had witnessed the whole incident and were happy to confirm that she had been the aggressor the entire time. A week later, we got word that corporate had dismissed her complaint entirely and had actually flagged her in their system as someone who was banned from all locations. They apologized to our team for having to deal with her behavior and assured us that we'd handled the situation professionally. 2 weeks after the corporate decision, she showed up again during the lunch rush. This time, she looked even more unhinged than before, like she'd spent the entire 2 weeks stewing over what had happened. She announced that we thought we could get away with destroying her reputation, but she was there to make sure we all paid for what we did to her. This time, Sarah didn't even try to reason with her. She immediately called security and the police while the woman started grabbing condiment packets from the counter and throwing them around the restaurant. She screamed that she'd make sure this place burned to the ground and that we people had ruined her life, so now she was going to ruin ours. When the security guard tried to calm her down, she completely snapped. She started clawing at him and screaming about lawsuits and revenge. Customers were running for the exits, and those who stayed were recording everything on their phones. By the time the police arrived, she was in full meltdown mode, still fighting with the security guard and screaming threats at everyone in sight. The officers had to physically restrain her and put her in handcuffs. One officer told her she was under arrest for assault, disorderly conduct, and trespassing. He warned her that she needed to calm down or this was going to get much worse for her. Even when they were putting her in the patrol car, she was still shouting about how we'd all pay for what we'd done to her. She kept demanding to speak to her lawyer and threatening to sue everyone from us to the police department. The whole restaurant was dead silent when they drove her away. After months of dealing with difficult customers, none of us had ever seen anything quite like that level of entitlement and rage over something so simple as pickle count on a fast food burger. Later that day, we found out that she had been charged with multiple misdemeanors and would likely be banned from our entire shopping center. I married into what I can only describe as a family of professional con artists. Don't get me wrong, they're all smiles and charm when you meet them. But scratch the surface, and you'll find people who think scamming others is just smart business. My wife's uncle is a perfect example. The guy spent his entire marriage playing video games instead of working. When his wife finally had enough and divorced him for cheating, he somehow walked away with alimony and half her money, over $500,000. The family threw him a party like he'd won the lottery. My wife loves these people, so we see them constantly. Meanwhile, I'm trying to raise my 2 kids to actually have a conscience. Every family gathering becomes this weird balancing act where I have to secretly undo whatever twisted life lessons they've absorbed from their relatives. This year's Thanksgiving was supposed to be like any other. Turkey, football, and probably some story about how someone's latest scheme paid off. What I didn't expect was to become public enemy number 1 for pointing out basic right and wrong. The big celebration this year was about my wife's cousin and her husband buying their first house. Everyone was gushing over how wonderful it was for such a young couple to become homeowners. My wife's aunt asked how they managed to afford it in this market. The cousin said it was actually a sad story because her husband's grandmother had passed away recently, but my uncle chimed in about what a blessing she left behind. The grandmother had left her house to be split between all her children. Simple enough, right? Wrong. My cousin's father-in-law is a lawyer, and he found some legal loophole that let him grab the entire house for his son instead. He paid all the legal fees as a wedding gift and basically screwed over his own ex-wife and her siblings in the process. The whole table erupted in congratulations. People were actually applauding this theft. My wife's uncle called it brilliant and praised the smart man for looking out for his son like that. My wife's aunt said it was perfect timing with them being newlyweds. My 8-year-old son was sitting right there, absorbing every word. I leaned over to him and my 12-year-old daughter and quietly explained that what they were describing wasn't actually legal or right. I told them that house should have been split fairly between all the grandmother's children. My son asked if the lawyer didn't make it legal. I explained that just because you can do something legally doesn't make it morally right, and that they basically stole that house from other family members who deserved their share. I thought I was being quiet, but apparently not quiet enough. My cousin asked what I had just said. I told her I was just explaining to my children that taking the entire inheritance instead of sharing it wasn't something to celebrate. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. My wife's uncle said to hold on and pointed out that it's not like she stole anything since her father-in-law handled everything. I replied that she's living in a house that was taken from other people who had equal claim to it, and she knows this now but is choosing to benefit from it anyway. The cousin's husband defended his dad, saying he was just looking out for them, and they didn't ask him to do it. I asked if they were giving the house back or trying to make things right with the family members who got cheated out of their inheritance. Everyone started talking at once. My wife's aunt asked how I could blame her for something she didn't even know about. My wife's uncle pointed out she was in the hospital when it happened and couldn't have stopped it. My wife said I was being really unfair. I told them I understood she didn't plan this, but she knows about it now. I explained that if you truly believe something is wrong, you don't just shrug and keep the benefits, you try to make it right. The cousin said she couldn't believe I was attacking her like this when I know she's been struggling with her mental health. I said I wasn't attacking her personally, but that keeping a house was essentially stolen from other family members is wrong, regardless of how it happened. The whole table turned on me then. Apparently I was a bully for pointing out basic morality. I was being too hard on someone who was vulnerable and just trying to survive. They asked why I couldn't just be happy for her good fortune. I realized this was a battle I couldn't win, at least not there and then. I told them we clearly see the situation differently, and that I should head home. I told my wife to call me when she was ready to leave, and I'd come pick her up. I kissed my kids goodbye and left. The drive home gave me time to think about what had just happened. Here was a family that regularly celebrated fraud and theft, and I was the bad guy for teaching my children right from wrong. About an hour later, my phone started blowing up. Apparently, my cousin had a panic attack after I left. Now the entire family was demanding I apologize for traumatizing her. My wife came home 3 hours later. She asked if I realized what I had done and told me the cousin had been crying all evening. She said everyone thinks I'm a monster. I asked if it was for having morals. She said it was for being cruel to someone who's been through enough already. I asked what about the people who got cheated out of their inheritance and where the concern for them was. She said that wasn't our problem. I told her that right there was exactly the attitude I don't want our children learning. The next morning I woke up to 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. The family had apparently spent the night discussing what a terrible person I was. They wanted a formal apology. They wanted me to admit I was wrong. Some of them suggested I shouldn't be allowed around the cousin anymore because I was triggering her. I sat down with my wife for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. I told her we needed to talk about her family's influence on our children. She asked if this was about yesterday. I said it was about every family gathering where her relatives celebrate fraud, theft, and scamming people. I explained that our kids are learning that this behavior is normal and acceptable. She insisted they're good people who've had hard lives. I replied that good people don't steal inheritance money from family members and then throw parties about it. We went back and forth for hours. She couldn't see why I was making such a big deal about it. After all, it wasn't like we stole anything. It wasn't our fault. We should just mind our own business. But when you stay silent about wrong behavior, you become part of it. When you celebrate people getting ahead through dishonesty, you're teaching your children that morality is optional. 3 weeks later, I got a call that made my day. Apparently, the other family members had hired their own lawyer and were challenging the inheritance grab. Turns out that foolproof legal loophole wasn't so foolproof after all. They'd found evidence that some documents had been filed improperly and the whole thing was being reversed. My cousin and her husband were going to have to give up the house and pay back money for improvements they'd made. The family lawyer was facing potential sanctions for ethical violations. When my wife told me the news, she looked devastated. She asked how I could be okay with them losing everything. I told her I was okay with things being made right. The family gathering that weekend was quite different from Thanksgiving. Instead of celebrating their brilliant scheme, everyone was scrambling to figure out how to help pay for lawyers to fight the reversal. And suddenly, nobody wanted to talk to me about the situation at all. I work at a small liquor store, and honestly, it's not a bad gig. But there's one thing that makes every shift feel like walking on eggshells. My coworker. Let's call her Karen because she fits the stereotype perfectly. Karen has been working here for about 2 years, and in that time she's managed to drive away 3 good employees and countless morning customers. She's rude, lazy, and acts like she runs the place even though she's just another clerk like me. The owner keeps her around because finding reliable people is hard, but everyone who works with her knows she's a nightmare. I started working here about 6 months ago, fresh out of high school and desperate for a job. When I first started, Karen seemed okay, not friendly, but not hostile either. That changed pretty quickly when she realized I wasn't going to kiss up to her like some of the other younger employees had tried to do. The real drama started about 3 months ago when I finally got my driver's license. Yeah, I know I was a late bloomer. Most of my friends got theirs at 16, but between school, work, and helping my mom with my little sister, I just never had the time or money for driving lessons. When I finally passed my test, I was over the moon. Freedom at last. About a week after getting my license, I was stocking shelves when Karen came storming over with this canvas deposit bag in her hand. She slammed it down on the counter next to me, so hard that a few bottles rattled. She told me she was sick and tired of going to that stupid bank every day. Since I had a license now, she said I would be doing the deposits from now on. I asked her to wait a minute and tried to explain that I had just gotten my license a week ago. I was still getting used to driving and there was all that construction on Main Street. I asked if someone else could do it today. She asked if I was serious and accused me of thinking I was too good to do my job. I told her that wasn't what I meant. I just wanted to maybe ask someone to come with me the first time so I wouldn't mess up the route or get lost in all that construction. She called me a baby and said it was literally just driving down the street and back. She said that anyone with half a brain could figure it out. I said I would do it tomorrow if someone could show me where to go and what to do, since I had never made a business deposit before. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out of her head. She said fine, but that she wasn't going to babysit me, and I should figure it out myself. The next day, I asked our manager if he could walk me through the deposit process and maybe ride with me the first time. He was totally cool about it and even mentioned how responsible I was being by asking for help instead of just winging it. He told me it was no problem and that Karen should have offered to train me properly anyway. He said that's what they usually do with new drivers. After that first guided trip, I started doing the daily deposits. And you know what? Karen was right about one thing. It was easy. But what she didn't mention was how nice it was to get out of the store for 30 minutes every day. No customers asking where the bathroom is, no restocking the cooler, no dealing with Karen's attitude. Just a peaceful drive to the bank and back. For about a month, everything was fine. I'd grab the deposit bag around 2 o'clock, make the trip, and come back refreshed and ready to finish my shift. Karen seemed happy to be rid of the responsibility, and I was happy to have a break. But then something weird started happening. Karen began hovering around the register at deposit time, making comments about how she didn't mind going to the bank. She would tell me that she could take the deposit if I wanted, claiming she wasn't doing anything important. I would thank her but tell her it really wasn't a big deal and that I didn't mind going. She would push back, saying she was sure and reminding me that she used to do it all the time and knew the routine better. I would tell her I had it handled but thanks for offering. This went on for a few days, with her getting more and more pushy about wanting to do the deposits again. I couldn't figure out what her deal was until I realized she must have remembered how nice that little break was. Too bad for her, I wasn't giving it up. The offers turned into demands pretty quickly. She would announce that she was doing the deposit and tell me I could finish stocking the wine section instead. I would tell her that actually I would stick with my usual routine and the wine could wait until I got back. She would ask if I was being serious and call me ridiculous, saying it was just a stupid bank run. I would ask her why she wanted to do it so badly then. She never had an answer for that one. Things escalated when she started complaining to other coworkers about how I was hogging the deposit duty. She made it sound like I was being selfish by not letting her do this terrible, burdensome task that she had literally forced on me just weeks earlier. The breaking point came when she walked into our manager's office and demanded that he make me give up the deposits. She told him I was being completely unreasonable and that she had been doing deposits way longer than me. She complained that now I wouldn't let her do her job. Our manager called me in, and I could see Karen standing behind him with this smug look on her face, like she'd already won. He asked me if it was true that I wouldn't let Karen do the deposits anymore. I told him that was right. I explained that she had asked me to take over the deposits because she was tired of doing them, and now I did them every day. He asked if there was a problem with me continuing to do them. I said not at all, I like the responsibility, and it got done on time every day. The manager looked at Karen, then back at me. He asked Karen if she had told me to start doing deposits because she didn't want to anymore. Karen started turning red. She admitted that yes, she had, but said that didn't mean I got to keep them forever. The manager told her that actually it kinda did. He pointed out that she had asked me to take on this responsibility, I liked doing it, and I was reliable. He said he didn't see the problem. Karen protested that she wanted to do them sometimes too. The manager told her she should have thought about that before she dumped them on me. He said the deposits were my responsibility now. After that meeting, Karen could barely look at me without scowling. She started making little comments about how some people don't know how to share, and how I was acting like I owned the place. The irony was completely lost on her. What happened next was even better. About a week later, one of our regular customers overheard Karen complaining to another coworker about the whole situation. The customer asked her to wait and said he wanted to get this straight. She had forced the new girl to do something she didn't want to do, and now she was mad because I wouldn't give it back. Karen said it wasn't that simple. The customer told her it sounded pretty simple to him and that she had played herself. Even the customers could see how ridiculous she was being. Karen still works here, and she still hates pretty much everyone except the owner. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.